I'm Andrea, and I'm 32 years old. 3 years ago, my husband Axel lost his job, and that's when my perfect little suburban life turned into a complete nightmare. Oh, and by perfect, I mean the kind of perfect where I was already doing everything while pretending we were a team. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt like you married a grown man who turned into a toddler overnight. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. The morning it all started, I was rushing around getting our 8-year-old daughter Emma ready for school, while Axel sat at the kitchen table, staring at his phone with this look of complete devastation. His company had just been bought out, and they were restructuring, which is corporate speak for, "You're fired, but we'll make it sound fancy." "Don't worry, babe," I said, kissing his forehead while juggling Emma's lunchbox and my work bag. "You'll find something better. You always do." He grabbed my hand, his eyes watery. What if I don't? What if this is it for me? I should have recognized the manipulation in that moment, the way he immediately made his job loss about my responsibility to fix it. But I was still playing the role of supportive wife back then, still believing that marriage meant absorbing your partner's problems until they became your own. "You will," I assured him, already mentally calculating how long our savings would last. "I believe in you." Emma tugged on my sleeve. "Mommy, I need you to sign my permission slip." "Which permission slip, honey?" "The one for the field trip next week. It's in my backpack." I glanced at Axel, who was still wallowing in his own misery, completely oblivious to the fact that our daughter needed attention. Classic. Even in crisis, parenting remained exclusively my department. While I signed Emma's form and packed her snack, Axel disappeared upstairs. I heard the shower running and assumed he was getting ready to start job hunting. How optimistic of me. That evening, I came home from working a 10-hour day to find Axel exactly where I'd left him that morning, except now he was on the couch playing video games instead of sitting at the table looking tragic. "How did the job search go?" I asked, setting down groceries and mentally preparing for dinner prep. "I applied to a few places online," he said without looking away from the screen. "There's not much out there right now." Emma bounded into the kitchen. "Daddy, can you help me with my math homework?" "In a minute, sweetheart. Daddy's in the middle of something important." I watched this exchange while unpacking groceries, already seeing the pattern that would define the next 3 years of my life. Axel's video game was more important than our daughter's education. His mood was more fragile than our family's stability. His problems were more urgent than anyone else's needs. But that night, I still believed it was temporary. 2 months into Axel's unemployment, I discovered something fascinating about marriage. When one person stops contributing, the other person doesn't get to work half as hard. They get to work twice as hard while listening to constant complaints about how unfair life is. I was getting up at 5 a.m. to meal prep, do laundry, and clean the house before getting Emma ready for school and myself ready for work. Meanwhile, Axel had apparently decided that unemployment meant retirement. "Andrea, we need to talk about money," he announced one Thursday evening as I walked through the door after a particularly brutal day of back-to-back client meetings. I found him sitting at our kitchen table with all our bills spread out in front of him, like he was conducting some kind of financial investigation. Emma was in the living room trying to do her homework while watching TV because no one else was available to help her focus. "What about money?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. "We're spending too much. You need to pick up extra hours or maybe ask for a raise." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. When none came, I realized he was serious. "Axel, I'm already working 50 hours a week. I got a raise 6 months ago. I'm covering all our expenses plus your car payment, your phone bill, and your health insurance since you lost your benefits." He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Well, maybe you could freelance on weekends or something. I've been looking at our budget, and we could save money if you cooked more instead of buying those expensive pre-made salads." The expensive pre-made salads. I was buying them because I was leaving the house at 7 a.m. and getting home at 7 p.m., and they were the only way I could ensure Emma got vegetables with her dinner. But sure, let me add meal planning and grocery shopping and cooking from scratch to my already impossible schedule. "What did you do today?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I had 3 interviews." My heart lifted slightly. Maybe he was really trying. "That's great. How did they go?" "They were all video calls. The first one was at 10, so I had to skip my morning workout. Then I had one at 2, but the connection was bad, so it only lasted 15 minutes. The last one was at 4, but they rescheduled for next week." I tried to process this timeline. 3 video calls from our home office, totaling maybe an hour and a half of actual work, and somehow this had been a full, exhausting day that precluded him from helping our daughter with homework, starting dinner, or doing literally any household task. "Did you help Emma with her school project? The one that's due tomorrow?" His face went blank. "What school project?" "The science fair project we've been talking about for 2 weeks. The one where she needs to build a volcano." "Oh, That. I thought you were handling that. Of course he did. Because in Axel's mind, I was handling everything. His job was to sit in our house, eat our food, use our utilities, and occasionally grace us with his presence during the few minutes he wasn't gaming or working out or having very important video calls about jobs he'd never get. That night, Emma and I stayed up until midnight building a papier-mâché volcano, while Axel went to bed early because his day of doing absolutely nothing had been emotionally draining. Month 4 of the Axel unemployment experience brought a delightful new development. He'd discovered that managing our household finances was apparently his calling. By managing, I mean micromanaging every penny I earned while contributing absolutely nothing himself. "Andrea, I need to talk to you about this credit card statement," he said, waving the bill in my face the moment I walked through the door on a Friday evening. Emma was at my sister's house for a sleepover, which meant I'd been looking forward to a rare, quiet evening, maybe a bath, maybe a glass of wine. Maybe just sitting in silence for 20 consecutive minutes without someone needing something from me. What about it? You spent $87 at Target last weekend. What did you even buy? I mentally retraced my steps. School supplies for Emma, toilet paper, laundry detergent, groceries for lunches, and a new work blouse because my old ones were getting too small after stress eating my way through months of this nightmare. Household essentials and work clothes. Work clothes, Andrea, we can't afford for you to be shopping for fun. Fun. He thought buying a basic blouse to replace one with a coffee stain was fun. Meanwhile, I'd noticed some interesting charges on our account that apparently didn't warrant discussion. $60 at the local sports bar, $45 for a new video game, $32 for premium streaming services. "What about your charges?" I asked. "The bar tab from Tuesday night?" His expression shifted to defensive. I was networking, meeting with some guys who might have job leads. At sports bar during a weeknight? Sometimes the best opportunities come from casual connections. Right. And I'm sure those connections were totally worth spending money we supposedly didn't have while I was at home helping Emma with fractions and wondering how we were going to make next month's mortgage payment. "Axel, I work 50-hour weeks and cover all our bills. I think I can buy a $40 blouse without a committee meeting." "That's exactly the attitude that's going to put us in financial trouble," he snapped. "You think because you have a job, you can just spend whatever you want. But we're a team. We make these decisions together." A team. That was rich. Teams usually involve two people contributing effort toward a shared goal. What we had was more like a hostage situation where I did all the work and he criticized my technique. Have you ever experienced someone trying to control your money while contributing nothing to it? Drop a comment below if you know exactly how this feels. "Fine," I said, too tired to fight. "I'll be more careful with spending." "Good. And maybe we should set up a system where you run purchases over $20 by me first, just so we're both on the same page." I agreed because it was easier than arguing. I agreed because I was exhausted from carrying the entire weight of our family's responsibilities. I agreed because I still stupidly believed this was temporary, and eventually things would go back to normal. That night, lying in bed next to my unemployed husband who was now snoring peacefully after a hard day of financial supervision, I realized normal wasn't coming back. Normal had been slowly disappearing for months, and I'd been too busy trying to hold everything together to notice it was gone. By month 6, Axel had perfected the art of making his unemployment entirely my fault. According to him, he couldn't find a job because I wasn't supportive enough. He couldn't help with Emma because he was too stressed from his job search. He couldn't do housework because he needed to focus his energy on networking and applications. What he could do was monitor my every movement like a parole officer. "You're 15 minutes late," he said the moment I walked through the door on a Wednesday evening. He was standing in the kitchen with his arms crossed, and I could practically see him counting the seconds I'd cost him. "Traffic was horrible on 5th Street. There was an accident. You should have called." "You're right. I'm sorry." The apology came automatically now, like a reflex I'd developed to avoid longer conversations about my various failures as a wife. "Emma's in her room crying," he continued. "She couldn't reach you when she called about her science test. She got a B- and wanted to tell you about it, but you weren't available." Guilt hit me like a physical blow. My daughter had tried to share her achievement with me, and I'd missed it because I was stuck in a conference call that ran over. Another casualty of trying to work twice as hard to compensate for having a husband who'd apparently forgotten what work meant. "Where were you when she called?" "I was in the garage organizing my tools. I didn't hear the phone." Of course. His tool organization project was apparently more important than supervising our 8-year-old's emotional needs. But somehow, my being unreachable during work hours was the real problem. I went upstairs to find Emma sitting on her bed, still in her school uniform, looking miserable. "Hey, sweetheart, I heard about your science test. A B- is really good. I wanted to tell you right when I got home, but Daddy said you were too busy with work to talk." "I'm never too busy for you, Em. Sometimes I'm in meetings and can't answer the phone right away, but you can always leave me a message or ask Daddy to help you call me. I asked Daddy to help me call, but he said he was doing something important and that you should be home by now anyway. I felt something twist in my chest. Axel had let our daughter sit with her disappointment rather than help her reach me, then used her sadness to make me feel guilty about working. The manipulation was so elegant it was almost artistic. Well, I'm here now. Tell me everything about the test. We spent an hour talking about her science project and the questions she'd gotten wrong. She brightened up significantly, and I realized how much she'd been missing having a present parent during these crucial after-school hours. When I went downstairs, Axel was on the couch watching Netflix. Em seems better, I said. She just needs more attention from her mother. Kids need stability. She needs attention from both her parents. You were here when she got home upset. You could have comforted her. I'm not the one who chose to prioritize work over family. That's when it hit me. In Axel's mind, my working wasn't a choice I was making to support our family. It was a choice I was making against our family. My job wasn't the thing keeping us financially afloat while he remained unemployed. It was the thing preventing me from being the full-time mother and wife I was supposed to be. The trap was perfect. Work enough to pay all the bills, but not so much that it interfered with my domestic duties. Be successful enough to carry the family financially, but not so successful that I forgot my real priorities. Earn all the money, but never act like it was mine to earn. That night, I made my first concrete plan to change something. I wasn't sure what yet, but I knew this couldn't continue indefinitely. Something had to give, and for the first time in months, I was starting to think it should be him. Month 8 brought the great chore negotiation of our marriage. Axel had finally noticed that I seemed stressed, and being the thoughtful husband he was, he'd come up with a solution. He would graciously help with household tasks if I would just ask him nicely and give him specific instructions about how to do them. I want to help more around the house, he announced over breakfast while I was packing Emma's lunch, loading the dishwasher, and reviewing emails on my phone. But you never ask me to do anything. I paused, my phone halfway to my ear for a work call I needed to take before my first meeting. I'm sorry, what? You act like you have to do everything yourself, but I'm here. I'm available. You just have to communicate better. The idea that I needed to manage his participation in running our own household was so absurd, I almost laughed. Almost. But I was too tired for laughing anymore. Okay, I said carefully. Could you handle dinner tonight? Something simple is fine. Sure, what should I make? Whatever you think would be good. We have chicken in the fridge, pasta in the pantry, vegetables in the crisper. But what specifically do you want? Whatever you feel like cooking. You're the one cooking it. He looked genuinely confused, but I don't know what you and Emma like. After 9 years of marriage and 8 years of parenting, my husband needed me to brief him on our food preferences like he was a new babysitter. This was the man who claimed he wanted to help more. We eat everything, Axel. Just pick something. Maybe you could text me a recipe during the day and let me know what time you want to eat. I started my car and took 3 deep breaths. He wasn't offering to help with dinner. He was offering to be my assistant in preparing dinner while I continued to do all the actual planning and decision-making from my office. That evening, I came home to find Axel sitting on the couch and Emma eating cereal for dinner. What happened to the dinner plan? I waited for you to send me a recipe, but you never did. I didn't want to mess anything up. I told you to make whatever you wanted, but I needed more guidance than that. Emma looked up from her bowl of Lucky Charms. Daddy said we should wait for you to come home and cook, but I got hungry. Of course he did. Even when I explicitly delegated a task, somehow my failure to micromanage every detail of its execution made me responsible for the fact that it didn't get done. It's okay, sweetheart. Cereal for dinner happens sometimes. I made myself a sandwich and sat down next to Emma while Axel returned his attention to whatever show he was binge-watching. The same show he'd been watching when I left that morning. The same show he'd probably been watching all day while I was in back-to-back meetings trying to earn enough money to keep our lives running. Mommy, Emma said quietly, are you and Daddy getting divorced? My heart stopped. Why would you ask that, honey? Because Madison's parents got divorced, and before it happened, her mom was always sad and tired like you are, and her dad stayed home all day like Daddy does. Out of the mouths of babes. My 8-year-old daughter had identified the pattern I'd been too close to see clearly. I was living like a single parent who happened to have an additional dependent instead of a partner. Daddy and I are just going through a tough time while he looks for work, I said, which was technically true but avoided the real issue. Will it get better when he finds a job? I honestly didn't know anymore. The unemployment had revealed something about my husband that I'd been willfully ignoring for years. Even when he'd been working, I'd been doing most of the household management. Even when he'd been contributing financially, I'd been the one handling the emotional labor of our family. The job loss hadn't changed who Axel was. It had just made it impossible for me to keep pretending he was someone else. That night, after Emma went to bed, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went for a walk by myself. No phone, no agenda, no list of tasks to accomplish. Just me, walking through our neighborhood, thinking about what my life had become and what I wanted it to be instead. For the first time in 8 months, I let myself imagine what it would be like to not come home to criticism and demands, what it would be like to make decisions about my time and money without having to justify them to someone who contributed nothing but judgment. The word divorce flickered through my mind, and instead of immediately pushing it away, I let it sit there. I examined it. I tried it on like a coat I wasn't sure I was ready to buy. It didn't feel as terrifying as I'd expected. Month 10 marked what I now think of as the final straw incident, though I didn't realize it was final at the time. I was still operating under the delusion that things might improve if I just found the right combination of patience and clear communication. Emma's school was having a parent-teacher conference week, and for the first time in months, I thought this might be something Axel could handle. He was available, and it would show Emma that he was involved in her education. "Can you take the 3 o'clock conference with Mrs. Peterson on Thursday?" I asked him Tuesday morning, while rushing to get ready for work. "What's it about?" "It's just the regular parent-teacher conference. They do them every semester to discuss how she's doing academically and socially." "But is there a specific problem? Is Emma in trouble?" "No, Axel, it's routine. Every parent goes to these. Maybe you should handle it. You know more about her school stuff." Of course I knew more about her school stuff. I was the one who helped with homework every night, signed permission slips, attended PTA meetings, and volunteered for classroom events. But that was exactly why I needed him to start sharing these responsibilities. "That's why I'm asking you to go, so you can know more about her school stuff." He agreed, reluctantly, and I felt a small surge of hope. Maybe this would be a turning point. Maybe he'd remember what it felt like to be an engaged parent. Thursday evening, I came home eager to hear how the conference had gone. "How did it go with Mrs. Peterson?" Axel looked up from his video game with a blank expression. "What?" "Emma's parent-teacher conference this afternoon." "Oh, that." I rescheduled it. My heart sank. Why? I had a really important phone interview at 3:30, and I couldn't miss it. Career opportunities have to take priority. You couldn't have told them you had a prior commitment? "Andrea, this was a potential job. Jobs are more important than school meetings. Did you reschedule the conference for a time I could attend?" I told them you'd call to set something up. So not only had he failed to attend the meeting he'd committed to, but he'd created additional work for me to fix his mistake. It was like a masterclass in weaponized incompetence. "How did the interview go?" I asked, though I was pretty sure I already knew the answer. "It got moved to next week. Some scheduling conflict on their end." Perfect. He'd blown off our daughter's parent-teacher conference for an interview that didn't even happen. But in his mind, even the possibility of a work commitment trumped his actual commitment to our child's education. That night, after I'd called Mrs. Peterson to apologize and reschedule, I found myself sitting in Emma's room watching her sleep. She was 8 years old, and her father was essentially absent from her daily life. She was learning that men were people who took up space and resources, while women did the actual work of keeping families functioning. What kind of example was I setting by accepting this dynamic? What was I teaching her about her own worth and what she should expect from future partners? I'd been so focused on holding our family together that I hadn't considered whether our family was worth holding together anymore. I'd been so committed to making our marriage work that I'd forgotten to ask whether our marriage was actually working for anyone except Axel. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. While Axel was still sleeping off his exhausting day of doing nothing, I called a divorce attorney. "I'd like to schedule a consultation," I told the receptionist. "I want to understand my options." The appointment was set for the following week. I didn't tell Axel about it because I wanted to know what I was dealing with before I made any irreversible moves. But for the first time in almost a year, I felt like I was taking action instead of just reacting to circumstances. I was choosing my next step instead of having it chosen for me. It felt terrifying and liberating and long overdue, all at the same time. The divorce attorney's office was nothing like I'd imagined. I'd been expecting something intimidating and formal, but Rebecca Martinez had a warm, comfortable space with family photos on her desk and a coffee machine in the corner. She looked like someone's favorite aunt, which somehow made discussing the end of my marriage feel less catastrophic. "Tell me about your situation," she said, pouring me a cup of coffee that I desperately needed after taking a half day from work for this appointment. Where do I even start? With the fact that my husband hasn't worked in 10 months, but somehow thinks he's entitled to control my salary? With the way he's turned our daughter into pawn in his guilt games? With the slow-motion destruction of my self-respect that I've been calling marriage? "My husband lost his job almost a year ago," I began. "Since then, he's become completely dependent on my income, while simultaneously trying to control every aspect of how I spend it. Rebecca nodded, making notes. Are there children involved? One daughter, Emma. She's 8. How is your husband's relationship with your daughter? I paused, thinking about Emma eating cereal for dinner while Axel watched Netflix. About the missed parent-teacher conference. About the way he used her emotions to manipulate me. He's physically present but emotionally absent. He doesn't help with homework, doesn't take her to activities, doesn't really parent. He just exists in the same house. Does he have any income at all? None. He's supposedly job hunting, but honestly, I think he's given up. He's gotten comfortable letting me support him while he criticizes everything I do. Rebecca set down her pen and looked at me directly. Andrea, what you're describing sounds like financial abuse. The controlling behavior, the criticism, the way he structured your life so that you're responsible for everything while he maintains all the authority, that's not unemployment stress. That's a pattern. Hearing it named made something click into place. Financial abuse. It wasn't just laziness or depression or a temporary rough patch. It was a deliberate system designed to keep me trapped. What would a divorce look like in my situation? Well, you'd need to consider custody arrangements, division of assets, and potentially spousal support. Since you're the primary breadwinner and he's been unemployed, he might actually be entitled to alimony. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. Alimony? To him? It's possible. Courts look at the standard of living established during the marriage and try to maintain that for both parties. If he's been unemployed for an extended period and has been dependent on your income, a judge might award temporary support to help him transition. The irony was breathtaking. Not only had Axel contributed nothing to our household for almost a year, but I might actually have to pay him to leave. The system was set up to reward his behavior and punish my independence. What about our house? That depends on several factors. When did you buy it? Who's on the mortgage? What's the current equity situation? We bought it 5 years ago. Both our names are on everything, but I've been making all the payments since he lost his job. Actually, I was making most of the payments even before that. Do you have documentation of that? Bank statements, sure. But we have joint accounts, so it might be hard to prove. Start gathering financial records now. Bank statements, credit card bills, payment histories. Document everything. If this goes to court, you'll want clear evidence of who's been contributing what. Court. The word sent a chill through me. I'd been imagining a civilized conversation where we divided our assets and went our separate ways. But Rebecca was talking about evidence and documentation like we were preparing for battle. How long does a divorce usually take? If it's uncontested, a few months. If he fights it, especially over custody or property, it could take a year or more. Would he fight for custody? He barely interacts with Emma now. Rebecca's expression grew serious. Sometimes the least involved parents become very interested in custody during divorce proceedings, especially if there's child support involved. Another lovely possibility I hadn't considered. Axel might suddenly discover his paternal instincts if it meant reducing his financial responsibilities or increasing mine. I left Rebecca's office with a folder full of forms and a list of documents to gather. The consultation had cost me $300 and completely reframed my understanding of what I was facing. This wasn't going to be a simple split. This was going to be a fight, and I needed to be prepared for Axel to use every weapon in his arsenal to maintain his comfortable lifestyle. That evening, I came home to find him in his usual position on the couch, controller in hand. "How was work?" he asked without looking away from his game. "Fine," I said, the word feeling strange in my mouth. Nothing about my life was fine anymore, but I wasn't ready to show my cards yet. "Emma's at soccer practice. I figured you could pick her up on your way home." "What way home?" "Soccer practice is 20 minutes in the opposite direction from my office." "Well, you're the one with the car." Of course. Even arranging transportation for our daughter's activities was apparently my job. God forbid he should have to pause his very important gaming session to drive the child he was supposedly helping to raise. I picked up Emma and listened to her chatter about practice and her upcoming game. She was excited and happy, completely unaware that her parents' marriage was imploding around her. "Will Daddy come to my game on Saturday?" she asked as we pulled into our driveway. "I don't know, sweetheart. You should ask him." But I already knew the answer. Unless something major changed, Emma's soccer games would be just another item on the long list of parenting responsibilities that somehow belonged exclusively to me. What do you think will happen next? Drop your predictions in the comments below. 3 weeks of documenting my marriage felt like an archaeological dig through the ruins of my own life. Bank statements revealed that I'd been covering 90% of our expenses even before Axel lost his job. Credit card records showed his pattern of networking at bars and buying games while I paid for groceries and Emma's school supplies. The evidence was damning, but gathering it was emotionally exhausting. Every transaction was a reminder of how I'd been slowly trained to accept unacceptable behavior. "I think I'm ready to file," I told Rebecca during my second appointment. You've got a strong financial case, she agreed, reviewing the documents I'd compiled. The records clearly show that you've been the primary provider throughout your marriage. What's the next step? I'll prepare the paperwork. You'll need to decide how you want to serve him. Some people prefer to have the conversation first, others prefer to let the legal documents speak for themselves. I'd been dreading this conversation for weeks, but I knew I needed to tell Axel face to face. Despite everything he'd done, he deserved to hear it from me rather than from a process server. That Friday evening after Emma went to bed, I found my courage. Axel, we need to talk. He paused his game and looked at me with mild annoyance. Can it wait? I'm in the middle of a raid. No, it can't wait. Something in my tone must have registered because he finally turned off the console and faced me properly for the first time in weeks. I want a divorce. The words hung in the air between us. I'd expected him to be shocked or angry or devastated. Instead, he looked almost calculating. Is this about money? Because I've been meaning to talk to you about that. I've been thinking about starting a consulting business. I could work from home, be more flexible. Even now, even when I was literally ending our marriage, his first instinct was to find a way to maintain his current lifestyle while doing minimal actual work. This isn't about money, Axel. This is about the fact that we're not partners anymore. We're not even roommates. I'm supporting a dependent adult who criticizes my efforts and contributes nothing to our family. His expression shifted to the injured victim look I'd seen countless times. That's not fair, Andrea. I've been going through a really difficult time. Unemployment is devastating for men. I need support, not ultimatums. I've been supporting you for 10 months. I've covered every bill, done every chore, handled every parenting responsibility, and managed every household decision while you played video games and complained about my performance. What more support could you possibly need? So that's it? You're just giving up on us? I'm choosing myself for the first time in years. And I'm choosing Emma. She deserves to see what a functional household looks like. That's when his mask really slipped. You can't take Emma away from me. I'm not taking her away from you. You're welcome to be involved in her life, but I'm not going to pretend that what we have now is a family. We'll see about that, he said. And for the first time in our entire conversation, he sounded fully alert. You think because you make the money, you get to make all the decisions? Marriage doesn't work that way. Parenting doesn't work that way. There it was. The threat I'd been expecting. Somehow the man who couldn't be bothered to attend a parent-teacher conference was suddenly prepared to fight for custody. Axel, you barely parent Emma now. Why would you want custody? I'm her father. She needs her father. She needs a present, engaged parent. When was the last time you helped her with homework? When was the last time you took her anywhere? When was the last time you had a conversation with her that wasn't about what you needed from me? He couldn't answer because we both knew the truth. His sudden interest in fatherhood had nothing to do with Emma, and everything to do with maintaining control over me. The next morning, I served him with divorce papers. He read them in silence while I got Emma ready for school, and when I came back downstairs, his expression had shifted to something I'd never seen before. Cold, strategic, dangerous. You're making a mistake, Andrea, he said quietly. You think you hold all the cards, but you don't know what you don't know. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. He was preparing for war, and he thought he had ammunition I wasn't aware of. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt oddly calm. After 10 months of walking on eggshells around his fragile ego, there was something liberating about having our conflict out in the open. I guess we'll find out, I said, and left for work. That evening, Emma asked why Daddy seemed angry. Daddy and I are having some grown-up problems, I told her. But whatever happens between us, it's not your fault, and we both love you very much. She nodded solemnly, and I realized she'd probably been sensing the tension for months. Kids always know more than we think they do. The weeks leading up to our court date felt like living with a hostile stranger. Axel had transformed from a lazy, manipulative husband into a focused, calculating adversary. He started documenting my every movement, taking photos of the house whenever I left dishes in the sink, and asking Emma seemingly innocent questions about our daily routines. Mommy, why did Daddy ask me if you ever forget to pack my lunch? Emma asked one morning while I was scrambling to get ready for work, my hands stilled on her backpack zipper. What did you tell him? I told him you never forget my lunch. You make it every night and put it in the refrigerator. That's right, sweetheart. Did he ask you anything else? She thought for a moment. He asked if you ever seem sad or tired. I said you're tired sometimes because you work really hard. My stomach dropped. Axel was building a case against me, and he was using our 8-year-old daughter to gather evidence. The man who couldn't be bothered to ask Emma about her school day was suddenly very interested in her perspective on my parenting. Em, if Daddy asks you questions about me, it's okay to say you don't want to talk about it. You don't have to answer grown-up questions. Is Daddy trying to get me in trouble? No, honey. Daddy's not trying to get you in trouble. Sometimes adults have complicated feelings, and they don't always handle them well. That afternoon, I called Rebecca to warn her about Axel's behavior. It's not unusual, she said, which was both reassuring and depressing. Divorcing spouses often try to build cases against each other. The good news is that judges are usually experienced enough to see through obvious manipulation tactics. What if he tries to use Emma's statements against me? Document everything. If he's interrogating your daughter, keep track of it. Judges don't like it when children are put in the middle of custody disputes. Rebecca, what if he actually gets joint custody? What if I have to send Emma to live with him part-time? Based on what you've told me about his level of involvement in her daily care, that's unlikely. But we need to be prepared for anything. 2 days before our court date, Axel finally revealed his strategy. I've been thinking about our situation, he said over dinner, speaking directly to Emma instead of me. If Mommy and I get divorced, you might have to live with Daddy sometimes. Would you like that? Emma looked between us, clearly confused by the sudden attention and the loaded question. Would I still live in my room? Well, Daddy might have to move to a different house, but it would be your house too. I watched this manipulation happening in real time, feeling sick. He was trying to plant the idea that I was the one disrupting Emma's stability when he was the one forcing this conversation. Emma, I said gently, why don't you go start your bath? I'll be up in a few minutes to help you wash your hair. After she left, I turned to Axel. Don't use our daughter to negotiate with me. I'm not using her. I'm preparing her for reality. She needs to know that her life is about to change because of decisions you're making. Decisions I'm making? Axel, you've been unemployed for almost a year. You've contributed nothing to this household except criticism and demands. This situation is the result of choices you made, not choices I'm making. A judge might see it differently. What's that supposed to mean? He smiled, and it was the coldest expression I'd ever seen on his face. You'll find out. That night, after Emma was asleep, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling and trying to imagine what weapon he thought he had. I'd been supporting our family completely for months. I'd been the primary caretaker for Emma her entire life. I had documentation of his financial dependence and emotional absence. What could he possibly use against me that would be more damning than the truth about his own behavior? I was about to find out that sometimes the person you think you know best is the person most capable of surprising you, and not in a good way. The courthouse was exactly as intimidating as I'd feared. High ceilings, polished floors, and the kind of formal atmosphere that made every whispered conversation feel like a potential mistake. I sat next to Rebecca, reviewing our documents one final time, while across the room Axel consulted with his attorney. He'd hired someone, which shouldn't have surprised me but somehow did. The same man who'd claimed we couldn't afford for me to buy work clothes had found money for legal representation. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Williams. Judge Williams was a stern-looking woman in her 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She reviewed our case files while we settled into our seats, and I tried to project confidence I didn't feel. This is a dissolution of marriage between Andrea and Axel Thompson, she began. We're here to address custody arrangements for the minor child Emma Thompson, as well as division of marital assets. Mr. Thompson, since you're the petitioner for primary custody, please present your case. Wait, what? I turned to stare at Axel in shock. He'd filed for primary custody. The man who couldn't remember when Emma's parent-teacher conferences were scheduled wanted to be her primary caregiver. His attorney stood and began what I can only describe as a character assassination disguised as a custody petition. Your Honor, my client is seeking primary custody of his 8-year-old daughter due to serious concerns about the stability and safety of the home environment provided by his wife. Mrs. Thompson has become increasingly erratic and neglectful in her parenting duties due to an obsessive focus on her career. Erratic, neglectful, obsessive focus on career. I felt like I was hearing about a completely different person. Mr. Thompson has documented several instances of Mrs. Thompson's failure to provide adequate supervision and care for their daughter. I'd like to submit Emma's recent report card, which shows declining grades that coincide with Mrs. Thompson's increased work demands. He handed the judge Emma's report card, and my heart sank. She had gotten a few B's instead of her usual A's over the past couple of months. I'd been meaning to talk to her teacher about it, but between work deadlines and managing everything at home, it had slipped through the cracks. Additionally, Your Honor, I have photographic evidence of the neglectful condition of the family home under Mrs. Thompson's care. Photos appeared on the screen behind the judge, our kitchen with dirty dishes in the sink, Emma's playroom with toys scattered on the floor, my bedroom with unmade beds and laundry baskets full of clean clothes waiting to be put away. The normal chaos of a working household looked damning when presented as evidence of neglect. Every mother in America probably had similar photos on any given day, but in this context, they painted me as someone who couldn't manage basic domestic responsibilities. Furthermore, Axel's attorney continued, Mrs. Thompson's work schedule has become increasingly demanding and unpredictable. She frequently works late, often misses important school events, and has delegated most parenting responsibilities to my client while she prioritizes her career advancement. I wanted to stand up and scream. He was describing himself, but attributing his behavior to me. The gaslighting was so complete and confident that for a moment, I wondered if I was the crazy one. My client is unemployed but has used this time to focus entirely on his daughter's needs. He's been the primary caregiver while Mrs. Thompson has been absent from the family. He's prepared to continue this role and provide Emma with the stability and attention she needs. Judge Williams looked at me. Mrs. Thompson, how do you respond to these allegations? I stood up, my legs feeling unsteady. Your Honor, those photographs were taken out of context. Every working parent has dishes in their sink and toys in their playroom. That's not neglect, that's normal family life. What about your daughter's declining grades? Emma's grades have slipped slightly, but she's still a B+ student. I've been planning to meet with her teacher to discuss additional support. When was the last time you attended a school function? My mind went blank. Between covering all our expenses and managing the household, I'd missed several events over the past few months. Events that Axel could have attended but chose not to. I've missed some events due to work obligations, but I attend as many as possible. Your Honor, Axel's attorney interjected, Mrs. Thompson's priorities have clearly shifted away from her family. My client is prepared to provide full-time care and attention while she focuses on her career. Judge Williams was making notes, and I could see the case slipping away from me. Somehow, my working to support our family had been reframed as abandoning my child. My struggle to maintain our household single-handedly had been presented as evidence of incompetence. Mrs. Thompson, do you have any witnesses to speak to your character as a mother? Yes, Your Honor. I have several. Your Honor, if I may interrupt, Axel's attorney said. We have one more piece of evidence that we believe is crucial to this case. Judge Williams nodded, and I felt my stomach drop. What more could there be? We call Emma Thompson to testify. The courtroom went silent. They wanted to put my 8-year-old daughter on the witness stand to testify against me. This was the moment I realized I'd been fighting with someone who had no limits, no boundaries, no concern for collateral damage. Axel was willing to traumatize our child to win a custody battle against the person who'd been supporting him for almost a year. I looked across the room at my husband and saw a stranger, someone capable of cruelty I'd never imagined. Emma walked into the courtroom holding the bailiff's hand, looking impossibly small in her pink dress and white tights. Her eyes found mine immediately, and I tried to smile reassuringly, while my heart shattered into pieces. What kind of father puts his 8-year-old child through this? Judge Williams leaned forward, her stern expression softening slightly. Hello, Emma. My name is Judge Williams. Do you know why you're here today? Emma nodded solemnly. Mommy and Daddy are getting divorced, and you have to decide where I should live. That's right. I want you to know that this isn't your fault. And no matter what happens, both your parents love you very much. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Axel's attorney approached Emma with what I'm sure he thought was a gentle smile. Emma, I just want to ask you a few questions about living with your mommy and daddy. Is that okay? I guess so. Does your mommy work a lot? Yes, she works really hard. Does that make you sad sometimes? Emma hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the question. Sometimes I wish she could play more. I closed my eyes. Every working parent in the world could probably elicit the same response from their child, but in this context, it sounded like an indictment. When your mommy works late, who takes care of you? Usually, I take care of myself. I'm good at making snacks and doing my homework alone. Does Daddy help you when Mommy's working? Emma glanced toward Axel, then back at the attorney. Sometimes. What does Daddy do when he's home with you? He watches TV mostly, or plays games on his computer. I felt a flicker of hope. Even an 8-year-old could see that Axel wasn't an engaged parent. But then Axel's attorney shifted tactics. Emma, has your mommy ever seemed angry or sad lately? She cries sometimes at night. I think she doesn't know I can hear her. The admission hit me like a physical blow. My daughter had been listening to me fall apart, and I hadn't even realized it. Does that worry you? Yes. I don't like it when Mommy's sad. Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness. Judge Williams looked at my attorney. Do you have any questions for Emma? Rebecca stood up. Just a few, Your Honor. Emma, when you need help with something important, like homework or when you're sick, who do you usually ask? Mommy? When you want to tell someone about something good that happened at school, who do you tell first? Mommy. Who makes your lunch every day? Mommy. Who reads to you at bedtime? Mommy. Who takes you to the doctor when you're sick? Mommy. Rebecca was systematically establishing that despite my work schedule, I was still Emma's primary caretaker for all the important aspects of her life. Emma, do you feel safe with your mommy? Yes. Do you feel loved by your mommy? Yes, mommy loves me very much. No further questions, Your Honor. Judge Williams looked at Emma kindly. Emma, before you go, is there anything else you'd like to tell me? Anything you think I should know? Emma looked around the courtroom, her gaze settling on Axel for a long moment. Then she raised her small hand. Your Honor, can I show you something? Something Mommy doesn't know about? My blood turned to ice. What could she possibly have to show that I didn't know about? Judge Williams nodded gently. What would you like to show me, sweetheart? Emma reached into her small pink backpack and pulled out her tablet. The same tablet Axel had bought her for her birthday 6 months ago. I recorded something, she said quietly. I didn't know if I should show anyone, but I think you should see it. She handed the tablet to the bailiff, who brought it to Judge Williams. Emma's small fingers navigated to her video folder with practiced ease. This was 2 weeks ago, Emma said, when Daddy thought I was asleep. The video started playing, and the courtroom fell silent. The footage was shaky, clearly filmed by a child hiding behind a door, but the audio was crystal clear. Axel's voice, slurred and loud, filled the courtroom. Come on, baby, she'll never know. The kid's asleep and Andrea won't be home for hours. A woman's voice, definitely not mine, giggled in response. What if she wakes up? She won't. And even if she does, what's she gonna do? Tell her mommy? Andrea's never home anyway. The camera shifted, and we could see Axel on our living room couch with a woman I didn't recognize. Empty beer bottles covered the coffee table. They were kissing, his hands roaming over her body in the home where our daughter lived. You're terrible, the woman laughed. What if your wife comes home early? She won't. She's too busy working to pay attention to what happens here. Besides, if she did, maybe she'd finally realize what she's missing. The video continued for another few minutes, showing them getting increasingly intimate while Emma presumably hid upstairs, watching her father betray her family. Judge Williams paused the video and looked at Emma with gentle concern. Honey, why did you record this? Because Daddy always tells me to stay in my room when his friend comes over, and I wanted to know why. He said it was their special grown-up time and that Mommy couldn't know about it because it would hurt her feelings. How often does Daddy have this friend over? Lots of times. Usually when Mommy's working late. He makes me promise not to tell, but he's really loud and sometimes he forgets I'm in the house. Does Daddy drink like this often? Emma nodded. Every day after lunch. He says it helps him feel better about not having a job. The courtroom was dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Judge Williams looked directly at Axel, who had gone completely white. Mr. Thompson, do you have any explanation for this video? Axel's attorney was frantically whispering in his ear, but Axel himself looked like he might throw up. Your Honor, this is taken out of context. I was going through a difficult time. You were drinking heavily and entertaining another woman in your family home while your 8-year-old daughter was present and your wife was working to support the family. It's not what it looks like. It looks like adultery, child endangerment, and substance abuse, Judge Williams said coldly. Emma, still standing beside the judge's bench, spoke up in her small, clear voice. Daddy also sleeps until really late every day, and he yells at Mommy almost every night when she comes home from work. I heard him say that Mommy was stupid and that he could find someone better. The pieces of Axel's case were crumbling in real time. The concerned father narrative collapsed under the weight of video evidence showing him as an unfaithful, alcoholic manipulator who'd been using our daughter as a pawn in his game. Judge Williams looked at me with an expression that might have been sympathy. Mrs. Thompson, were you aware of any of this behavior? No, Your Honor, I had no idea. And I didn't. While I'd been working 60-hour weeks to keep our family afloat, my husband had been drinking, cheating, and traumatizing our daughter. The man I'd been trying so hard to support had been systematically destroying everything I was working to preserve. The irony was so complete, it was almost artistic. Axel had demanded this custody hearing to expose my supposed failures as a mother, and instead, our 8-year-old daughter had exposed his failures as a father, husband, and human being. Judge Williams called a 15-minute recess, during which Axel's attorney had what appeared to be a very intense conversation with his client. I could see Axel gesturing frantically, his face red with either anger or embarrassment. Meanwhile, Emma sat quietly next to me, coloring in a book someone had given her. Did I do something wrong, Mommy? She whispered. No, sweetheart. You did exactly the right thing. You told the truth. Is Daddy mad at me? I looked across the room at my husband, who was avoiding eye contact with both of us. Daddy's upset, but not at you. Sometimes grown-ups make bad choices, and then they get upset when people find out about those choices. When court resumed, The atmosphere had completely shifted. Judge Williams reviewed her notes before speaking, and I could tell from her expression that Axel's case was dead in the water. Based on the evidence presented today, particularly the video testimony provided by the minor child, I'm prepared to make my ruling. She looked directly at Axel. Mr. Thompson, your petition for primary custody is denied. The evidence shows a pattern of adultery, substance abuse, and child endangerment that makes you unsuitable for primary custodial care. Axel started to stand, but his attorney pulled him back down. Furthermore, Judge Williams continued, I'm awarding sole physical custody of Emma Thompson to her mother, Andrea Thompson. Mr. Thompson will be granted supervised visitation only, pending completion of alcohol counseling and parenting classes. Supervised visitation. The man who'd tried to paint me as an unfit mother would now need a court-appointed supervisor to spend time with his own daughter. Regarding the division of marital assets, the evidence of adultery means that Mr. Thompson has violated the terms of his marriage contract. Mrs. Thompson will retain the family home, all joint savings, and will not be required to pay alimony. I felt like I might faint with relief. Not only was I keeping Emma, but I wasn't going to be financially penalized for ending a marriage that had become a prison. Mr. Thompson, you have 30 days to vacate the family home. This court strongly recommends that you seek professional help for your alcohol dependency and consider the impact of your choices on your daughter. Judge Williams turned to Emma one final time. Emma, you were very brave today. You helped me understand what was really happening in your family, and that helped me make the best decision for your safety and happiness. Emma nodded solemnly. Thank you, Judge Williams. As we left the courthouse, I felt like I could breathe fully for the first time in months. Emma held my hand tightly as we walked to the car, and I realized that both of us had been carrying the weight of Axel's dysfunction without even realizing it. Mommy, does this mean Daddy won't live in our house anymore? That's right, sweetheart. It'll just be you and me for a while. Will you still have to work so much? The question hit me harder than any of Axel's accusations had. My daughter had been watching me struggle to hold everything together, and all she'd wanted was more time with the parent who actually cared for her. I'll probably still work the same hours, but I won't have to worry about Daddy's problems anymore. So when I'm home, I can focus just on you. Would you like that? Yes. And maybe we can get ice cream sometimes without having to ask if we can afford it. Even at 8 years old, Emma had been absorbing the financial stress that Axel had created through his manipulation and control. That evening, after Emma was asleep, I sat in my living room, and processed what had happened. Axel had tried to destroy me in court and had instead destroyed himself. His attempt to use Emma as a weapon had backfired spectacularly when she revealed evidence of his betrayal and abuse. The man I'd supported financially and emotionally for almost a year had been using my absence at work to cheat on me, drink heavily, and traumatize our child. While I'd been killing myself trying to hold our family together, he'd been systematically tearing it apart. 3 weeks later, Axel moved out. He took his clothes, his gaming equipment, and his massive sense of entitlement. He left behind years of unpaid bills, a traumatized daughter, and a wife who'd finally learned the difference between supporting someone and enabling them. Emma and I established new routines. Saturday morning pancakes, Sunday afternoon art projects, evening walks around our neighborhood where we could talk about her day without interruption or criticism. For the first time in years, our house felt peaceful. There was no one monitoring my spending, criticizing my housekeeping, or turning every conversation into a referendum on my failures as a wife and mother. 6 months later, I got a promotion at work. The same career ambition that Axel had framed as neglectful parenting was now providing Emma and me with financial security and opportunities we'd never had before. Emma's grades improved dramatically once she no longer had to navigate the stress of living in a household filled with constant conflict. She started inviting friends over, something she'd rarely done when Axel was there. Our house is happier now, she told me one evening while we were making dinner together. She was right. Our house was happier, quieter, calmer, more honest. I'd thought I was fighting to save my family, but I'd actually been fighting to save myself and my daughter from someone who'd been slowly destroying us both. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your child is show them that they deserve better than dysfunction, disguised as family loyalty. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let an 8-year-old girl tell the truth that adults have been too afraid to face. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in the most challenging situations. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect your family? Share your thoughts in the comments.